What do you think about the Roswell, the thing which has been happened in the Roswell? Like, they found one alien spaceship. Like, when we are talking about the alien and things like that, what is your take on that? Like,
So 1947 was really the year of the flying saucer for the Americans. It started with a pilot, excuse me, in Washington State who said he saw a bunch of flying discs near Mount Rainier. And then a little bit later in 47, there was something fell from the sky outside of Roswell, New Mexico. And the initial newspaper report was, oh, this is some kind of maybe one of these flying saucers we've been hearing about. And then the government showed up and said, yeah, no, it's not. And then other people said, yes, but look at this strange material. Oh my gosh. And so people debated it for a little while. The government stepped in and said, no. And the interesting thing is, the government was like, they really did kind of strong arm people who were witnesses or who were saying certain things. Like they went in and they told people, seriously, you need to stop talking about this. Just drop it. It was a weather balloon. That is the end of the conversation. Shut up. And so, of course, people, what would you think? You would think, so we were right. It
Mhm.
is a UFO. And so, therefore, it must be some kind of you're covering it up for some reason, probably because you got technology or whatever. And then it kind of just died. This is the funny thing. A lot of these things that we think are they've been around ever since the very beginning. They didn't really become things until fairly recently. It really isn't till 1980 when a book called The Roswell Incident comes out. And this is written by two people, Charles Berlitz and Bill Moore. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the Berlitz Language School. It's all over the world. They
Mhm.
have a very particular, they use something called the direct method for teaching. They have a very particular way that they teach. And he is the founder of that school. But in the late 60s, he kind of went down the weird route and he wrote a book about the Bermuda Triangle, which very few people had even considered a real thing. And he started pushing, no, it's real, it's real. Then he started writing stuff about Atlantis. Then he wrote stuff about this and that. And he's one of the fathers of this 1970s boom in weirdness, conspiracy theories, again, mainly held by left wing people at the time. Bigfoot, Bermuda Triangle, Atlantis, Noah's Ark was found.
There are people are showing all sort of the metals which has been found on this particular thing. This could be from some technologies out of the planet Earth, and this could be something that could may not be possible with a human being. This should be that sort of thing. What do you think about all these kind of evidences which they are pushing on the internet? And we
Well,
could.
the evidence is that this is not weather balloon material, and so
Mhm.
therefore it must be alien. Here's the truth of it, though. So the reason I mention this is nobody really thought about it. The government told people, shut up. They did, and nobody talked about it until this book comes out in 1980. Berlitz is one of the authors. Bill Moore, who is a massive scammer in the UFO world, he's one of the creators of the Majestic 12 conspiracy theory and a whole bunch of these other things. He's just another one of these early UFO scammers. And then people started talking about it and going back and looking at the quote unquote evidence that's around and so on and so forth, finding that sometimes it's hard to find official documents and pictures and things because the government really was trying to hush something up. They had, I can't remember the name of it now. I was trying to look it up real quick, but they had a program in which they would send not weather balloons, but a different kind of balloon very high into the atmosphere, high altitude balloons that were listening devices. Not so you could pick up a conversation, but they were listening for certain kinds of low frequency rumbles or booms that would tell them if the Soviets were conducting underground nuclear weapons tests. And so that was a state secret. That was a big secret. the Soviets can't know that we have these balloons way up there listening for if they're conducting nuclear tests because we ask them and they say they're not, but we don't believe them. So that was the secret program that the government was covering up, and so that's why people were strong armed into silence and so on. But then in 1980, Bill Moore and Charles Berlitz, who don't know about this secret program because it hadn't come out yet, they hadn't declassified it, they start to speculate. It was aliens. Well, why did they cover it up? Because they recovered technology and they recovered bodies or maybe living aliens. And from there grows a whole sweet industry, really, of fantastical stories, great stories, entertaining stories. None of them true about UFOs, secret government deals with aliens. Eisenhower back in 1957 made a deal with the aliens, let them abduct human beings in exchange for technology and all this stuff. And it all stems from these two guys, really. So that's what happened with Roswell.
So, but the thing is like that the balloons, weather balloons is being cleared up very fastly from the place. What do you think about that? Like, is it so normal to clear something from the
Because
incident
it
place?
wasn't a weather balloon. It was one of these listening device balloons. It was a different kind of a balloon, and they didn't want anyone to know that they had this up there because it was a secret.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's not weather balloon material because it's not a weather balloon. It's this different, sturdier kind of balloon. And
Mm-hmm.
so, no, it turns out that the residents of Roswell, New Mexico, and the sheriff had never seen this material before because they're not cleared for classified military experiments. So, of course, they'd never seen this material before. But the reason they made that initial jump to, oh, it's UFOs, is only because just a couple of months earlier, the UFO craze started, and flying saucers and all the rest. And so they just they just took that story that was flying around in the zeitgeist and in the newspapers at the time, ran with it, and the government kind of didn't mind that people were talking about that. Go ahead, talk about flying saucers because that way you're not really trying to find out what this stuff is, which is our secret listening device so that we can spy on the Soviets' nuclear program. So that's why.
Is there any episode which you have did about this particular incident?
I do mention Roswell briefly in there's a uh, as we were leading up towards what would become the first of now three congressional hearings in the United States on UFOs or UAPs as they're known now, unidentified aerial phenomena. Um, I did a whole bunch of stuff about UFOs, and the first one of those was about early ufology, and that's called Signs, Grudges, and Blue Books because those were the early programs looking into this stuff, and that's episode 23. Roswell's briefly mentioned, but it's basically all about those early days of UFOs and how that really started to become such a thing. But again, UFOs have been a thing around. Roswell really wasn't talked about. Nobody, even UFO people, never really thought about it because it was obscure and nobody had really heard about it until this 1980 book. And then suddenly everybody was like, I've known about it for years. No, you haven't. You didn't even know about it till this book came out. So, stop.
So what do you think about the UFOs in general? Is there any conspiracy
Mm.
theories which has been came true about the UFOs and the aliens basically? What is your call on that? Like,
Well, it's interesting. People used to ask me, do you believe? You seem to disbelieve all these conspiracy theories. Are there any that you think might have something to them? And I used to say there are two. There are two conspiracy theories that I give some serious thought to. One is UFOs, and two is that we all live in a simulation. Those are the two that make me go, yeah, maybe. The simulation one, I did a whole episode about it. The simulation one is a black box problem because if it's true, we will not be able to get out of the simulation enough to be able to tell if we are or we aren't. And so, therefore, like a religious belief, it's just something you just go with or don't go with. Who cares? If you're trying to find the truth, you'll never find the truth while you're alive because you can't. When it comes to the UFOs, I used to think while there are a lot of scammers, a lot of liars, a lot of scammers, quite a few lunatics in the UFO space, I always kind of thought there's something to it. I don't know what it is. I don't believe that people are being taken up and having things put into their anal cavities by aliens, because honestly, how many times would you need to do that before you go, yeah, it's exactly the same as the last 35 times we did it. The guy didn't like it. But, so like, how often do we do it? But surely there's something, because we do have so many stories, and there's it's not great evidence, but there's some evidence, and it's not helped by the people who throw up a dinner plate or a hubcap from a car in the air, take a picture of it, and go, "Look, a UFO." Those people aren't helping, because there really is something there. And the interesting thing, of course, it's become such a big thing now because the Americans have finally said something. For years, the French have said, absolutely 100%, we see stuff in our airspace and we don't know what the hell it is. And it moves and behaves like it's a physical object, not an illusion of some sort, optical illusion, like there's a physical thing there. It reflects light. There are radar signals, which means radio waves are hitting something physical and bouncing back to our receivers. So there's something there, and they move in a way that is impossible to our knowledge, according to not just our current level of technology, but our knowledge of the laws of physics and aerodynamics. The Belgians said the same thing. The Brazilians have been saying it for decades. The Japanese have said it. But, especially for Americans who kind of have a hard time believing any other country but America exists, it took the Americans to finally say, okay,
Mhm.
they did it.
Mhm.
I did all these episodes in the lead up to the big congressional hearing. They had the congressional hearing, and the people in the military, we discovered two interesting things. One, there is absolutely something in our airspace and we don't know what it is. Like, for sure, UFOs are absolutely real. What they are, that's the problem. Nobody knows. They don't know. Are they aliens? Maybe. Are they transdimensional beings? Maybe, if that's even a real thing. Are they another country's technology? We really don't think so, because we have pretty darn good technology and we're nowhere close to being able to do some of the things that these things can do. Are they physical? Sometimes they do seem to be. And that's the problem. So we learned that there is something. We learned that they do not know what it is. And we learned that there has been a concerted effort for decades to not really try and find out. Why?
Mhm.
You would think that we would be very curious about this. A couple of reasons. One, because the different branches of military and military intelligence do not like to share information with each other. The Navy has their information, the Air Force has their information. They don't like to share. They don't
Mhm.
want to share. They don't want to start that process. Number one. Number two, it turns out that in the US government, there are some pretty hardcore evangelical Christians. And these evangelical Christians absolutely believe in the literal truth of the Bible. And they absolutely believe
Mhm.
that Satan is a real being who
Mhm.
lives in the middle of the earth or on Saturn, or who the hell knows where they think he lives.
So
But
because
they
of
think he's
because of
real.
because of that, they tend to cover up a lot of stuffs which is related to the UFOs and aliens. That's what you're trying to say.
Because they think they know the answer. One guy,
Mhm.
there's this guy
Mhm.
who was looking into this stuff. Who, somebody talked to him in the corridors of the Pentagon where they worked, and he said, "Why do you keep poking around in this? We both know what they are." And this guy said, "Well, no, that's the whole point. That's why I'm trying to get more information, because we don't know what they are." And the guy goes, "But we do. Demons." So now we have this. So it turns out that, yes, when Project Blue Book, which was a decades long look into UFO reports, started, it was legit. And then the new guy who came in to take over was tasked very specifically with, "Mm-mm-mm-mm. All of these things have to be explained. You can't have any unexplained things on your books." And then the next guy that came in was a true believer in the demon hypothesis. And so he had a vested interest in saying, no, no, we can't talk about this. We just need to let it go because we're going to start Armageddon. We're going to start the final war between good and evil and destroy the earth, which we don't want to do. And so, therefore, we're not going to talk about this and we're not going to look into it. And anybody that says they saw a UFO needs to shut the hell up. And so that's what happened until now. They're starting to destigmatize the very topic, and people are starting to come out and say yes, like credible people, not Joe Blow on the ground, but like pilots, military pilots, and people who are trained to be observers are saying yes, I saw something. The problem is we don't know what they are.
See the
They're real. We just don't know what they are.
So what do I do agree to these 2 points. One is like, the simulation. Probably we could have we are living in a simulation. Why? Because
Possible.
in religious text also. I mean the ancient text which we are in India. Most of the peoples are believing. We say this is Maya. This is illusion.
Yeah.
There is something
It does sound very similar, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It sounds very similar. Also, the UFOs or the alien creatures, when we are talking about this stuff, like there is a particular possibility that let's assume we are only having five senses where we are able to hear, we are able to listen, we are able to see, and stuffs like that. Let's assume we are having some two more senses, and our perception about the world will be entirely different. So
True.
the thing is like the when we are doing the sort of configuration and sort of experiment with the gods and things like that, the deities. So some people are feeling this is actually coming out. Maybe this could be the other form of the life which is coexisting with the life of us also. This is one of the possibility which I strongly believe.
This is one of the, but again, I would caution
Mhm.
use that word belief
Mhm.
because you don't have any evidence for this.
Mhm.
None. All we know is that there are things flying around in the sky. They
Mhm.
especially like coming really close to military aircraft. They really like hanging around nuclear power plants and nuclear missile silos. And that's all we know. We don't know if they're crafts. They
Mhm.
act like they are, but we don't know that they are because sometimes they don't act like they are. So we don't know if they're vehicles.
Mhm.
We don't know if there are living creatures in those vehicles. We don't know what those living creatures are.
Mhm.
All the different theories out there. They're aliens from another planet. They're aliens from our own solar system. They're us in the future who have come back. Again, time travel, is it real?
Mhm.
Uh, no. They live inside the earth. Maybe the hollow earth theory, though I
Mhm.
think we know that that's probably not true. And then there's a whole suite of these transdimensional beings or beings that coexist with us in the universe, but we can't perceive. But for
Mhm.
some reason, they can. The problem, and it's interesting because I've been doing some research on this because I'm very soon going to do another follow up. Now that we've had three congressional hearings, I'm going to do a follow up on here's where we are with the UAP thing. Here's what's happening. The problem is that many of these people who were pushing for what they call disclosure, please, can we be honest about this? Can we admit that something's there? And can we share information so that we can maybe start figuring out what the heck it is and what the heck is going on? A lot of them are not getting what they want. And so many of them are starting to go down these different paths. It's almost because there's an economic ecosystem in the conspiracy sphere. You need to have a conspiracy theory that you're pushing or you don't make any money. No one's going to pay for a book that says, I don't know, you know,
And
no one's
very
going to do
true.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Very true. Like, maybe.
UFOs, who the hell knows? Buy my book. No one's going to buy that book. No one's going to listen to that podcast. No one's going to watch that movie, you know. So you got to come up with a thing, and more of these people are starting to go down this. There was a guy named John Keel who became famous researching the Mothman, and he had a whole theory based on literally nothing. That there are beings that are, because first he said, okay, it looks like UFO phenomena, but not just UFOs, um, electromagnetic interference, the Men in Black, which we now know is completely made up, and a few other things. They all seem to, it's almost like they're messing with us, but they're messing with us in a very lame way. Like they don't understand our systems, our society, the way that we even perceive things in the physical world. Like they're really bad simulacra of some kind, and they, it doesn't make sense. But there does, he got the sense very much that they were toying with people like him who were looking into them. So he started to come up with this idea of what he called not extraterrestrials but ultra terrestrials, which are in fact beings, fully formed beings, probably with their own society and their own, you know, civilization that live here, kind of, sort of, next to us, and we just don't perceive them. And that when they try and interface with us, they have to kind of bring it down, and they're
Yeah,
not very good at it.
this is something which I also believe, because some certain rituals which we perform in the, I mean, so-called the spirituality, these kind of things we really feel the presence of the extra being. It's not just the experience of a single person; it is the experience of a collective people. Like, it's not just, maybe some people are believing it's as God, some people are believing it as some sort of deities, and but if some people are looking into that with a radical mindset, in order to, get the, the secrets to be unveiled in whatever is existing. This is something which I have seen, and I have, I mean, some ancient text and scrolls, and there are methods to experience these kind of deities, or the another dimension being, maybe in modern language, maybe we could say, because when they are writing all this stuff, they may not be knowing what this is exactly, because they don't have all these kind of modern technologies and things like that. See, this is something which I experience, I mean, I believe, basically. So
Mm.
have you ever thought of doing a podcast on, the conspiracies which I believe?
Have I thought of doing conspiracy, an episode of Conspiracy Clearinghouse about conspiracies that you specifically believe? No, because I don't know what those are.
Mhm.
Which ones? Which ones do you believe?
I mean, no, I mean, about you. I'm talking about you. Did
Oh,
have you ever?
me. Oh,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
oh, I understand. I was like, no, I don't know. You have to tell me which ones you believe, and I'll tell you yes or no. The ones I believe, I've already done the simulation
Mm-hmm,
proposal, and I've done many of them on UFOs, and I'm going to do another one on that
mm-hmm,
soonish,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
especially looking at the transdimensional being angle of things. Um, though I don't buy it because again, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a religious person, and so uh, I understand, for example, like you say, hey, I've experienced it. It does feel like there's something else. I can't see it, but there is something else physically present here, and other people around me do. Having said that, there are studies and experiments that have been done that show it's actually not that hard to induce that um, perception or that intuition in people, especially in groups of people who are there for a focused particular reason, especially if they already have a pre-existing belief in these things. It's actually not hard to do at all. But even maybe, here's the thing when it comes to the transdimensional being thing, maybe my
mm-hmm,
problem is that so many of these UFO experts out there who are talking about this and who have started out of nowhere. It was
mm-hmm,
aliens, 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 aliens.
mm-hmm,
And now they have shifted very quickly when they're not getting enough play, enough attention to transdimensional beings who are evil. They're
mm-hmm,
evil. They eat, one of them is hysterical. They eat human souls while we dream. Oh,
mm-hmm,
just stop. You, what are you talking about?
mm-hmm,
You don't have any evidence. We don't even know that there are other dimensions. We don't know that there are things outside of our, because here's the thing, you and I can't perceive the infrared.
Mhm.
We have tons of machines that can, and they're not picking up on this stuff.
Mhm.
They're not picking up on any of this stuff. So then we get into, well, okay, but there's like a universe right next to our. Well, now been trying to do for decades. So again, if we want to take these things as articles of faith,
Mhm.
I believe that there are alternate variations of our universe next to us. And I believe, so that's one amazing thing that if it were proven would change everything and completely transform human consciousness and society. That's one thing.
Mhm.
Next, that those are inhabited by other beings or versions of ourselves. That's number two amazing thing to learn about. Even more changes. Number three, it's possible to move between one and another. That's three amazing things. And at
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
point, you've already lost me
Mhm.
because those are three amazing things, none of which we have any evidence for except maybe. And
Mhm.
then when we go through that, we go through all these different things, and we finally come to they are evil and they are eating our souls. Soul? Who proved the existence of the soul? When did
Mhm.
that happen? How did I not catch that news headline? I didn't know that we'd proven the existence of the soul. So that's another problem. Souls, they're eating our souls, which may or may not exist, and they're eating them, whatever that means, when we dream as they pass into our universe through our minds. Like,
Mhm.
what are you what are you talking about? Like suddenly,
Mhm.
when you hear this kind of stuff, some of the stories religions come up with sound positively reasonable
Mhm.
compared to some of the mythologies that the UFO people are
Mhm.
pushing out there. Because the religions at least do have a series of practices that
Mhm.
allow people to commune with each other, certainly,
Mhm.
commune with certain thought ideas and gestalts, certainly, with something else, maybe.
Mhm. Mhm.
I know it feels like it, so maybe, maybe
Mhm.
not, but maybe. And if not, how is it that, you and all these other people all have the exact same experience? Does
Mhm.
that mean that that experience has an external reality, which would be amazing to learn? Or does it mean that that's purely subjective and internal, but one strong personality somehow, non physically or without physical touch, communicated that to all the other people in the group? And that would be amazing to learn as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Either one of those would be absolutely amazing. And I would welcome any research into both of those possibilities or any other possibilities. But it gets confused when we get into this war of good and evil and interdimensional dream, soul eating dreamer monsters that fly around in spaceships. This doesn't help anything.
Mhm.
These questions, the questions I think that you're interested in looking at, are interesting questions and they're worthwhile questions. But when they get confused with all of this nonsense, with
Mhm.
these ridiculous horror story narratives, nobody benefits except
Mhm.
for the people who are pushing those narratives, you know.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then my next question is, how much do they benefit? How much does Bill Moore make pushing the Majestic 12 narrative? He
Mhm.
took the time to make fake documents that looked like they were multiple generation copies
Mhm.
using ditto machines at the time. So he took, I mean, hours and hours and hours to write them, to put a coffee, ring on them, to make them look authentic. Hours of his time. So he could slip them through the mail slot at his friend's house. And then what? Write a book which sold
Mhm.
what?
So what
2,000